Hi everyone, and today we're going to be looking at the games design document. Now, the games design document is quite a big constituent part of your coursework, regardless of what particular option you're doing. So I think if you're doing option 1, it's about 90%, and possibly option 2, it's 40%. But I'll go through this lecture first, and you can have a think about what particular option you're wanting to do. I'll also put up the assessments either this week or next week, and you can have a think about it. So it doesn't have to be a sort of definite answer right now, and you can make that decision whenever you feel you want to. Maybe I'll go through this first, and you can make the informed choice. So games design document. You'll notice that I have Lego Magneto here, and then after I press the button, eventually, invariably, finally, come on now, we have another sort of Magneto appearing, and he is a little sort of head bobby Magneto that is on my office desk, and a very, very grateful honour student gave him to me once because he was happy with his supervision. So you can see the two different sort of designs here. I've also got this other design as well. I don't know if you can see that, but that's a Magneto that I picked up at Comic-Con, and he's a metal die cast Magneto. So, you're right to fear us! We are the future! He's trying to drown out the sirens in Paisley there, and I'll put that down now. Anyway, the point is that you can have a particular goal that you're wanting to achieve, and there can be many different routes to that goal, and different designs of just even one character, and that depends on your preference, and it's really your design is the point I'm trying to make to you. So it's a bit like Hugh Dancy in Hannibal. This is my design, and it is your design, and it's entirely up to you how you design things individually or as part of a team. So the structure of the presentation is what is the purpose of a games design document? We'll discuss that slightly. What are the components, the constituent components of a good games design document? What is the games design document in terms of looking at a sort of academic definition? And then we'll look at a definition from Wikipedia as well, even though we shouldn't. What should it consist of? For the purposes of this module, we'll quickly discuss story, characters, objects, influences, level, environment design, art, sound and music, user interface and game controls. I've also got a very, very sort of a large games design template at the end of this lecture by this particular academic in 2006. Actually, it was the only one that I could really find in the academic literature that was very, very detailed at that time. But I will provide you a template. So this is just to give you ideas more than anything else. Doesn't necessarily have to be a sort of copy of the structure of what I'm presenting at the end. So it's just to generate ideas, because with the large coursework you're going to have to come up with quite a bit, 2,000 words, and with the smaller one about 1,000 words. But it should be fairly straightforward. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. What purpose does the games design document serve? So according to Kramarczewski and Vinucci, 2018, in their book Practical Games Design, the purpose of the games design document is to provide a detailed description of what needs to be done. So it's really about effective communication, okay? And it acts as a sort of encyclopedia, Bible of the game, where the team can keep track of what has been done and how, why, and what is changed, so that they're not necessarily having to rely on memory. Now, if you're considering a AAA game, this can have a games design document that is thousands of pages long, and you need to be able to, get straight to the piece of functionality that you're wanting to look at or change. Okay, you're part of that team. So a good games design document should be modular, split into the different compartmentalized sections of functionality, yes, has goals and requirements, is the result of a discussion, clear, brief and concise, not necessarily clear, brief and concise in terms of particular things you're wanting to focus on in this module. You may wish to focus quite a lot on story, and we do have people sort of coming through the computer degree stream that do sort of focus on story and documentation. And even when you get to fourth year and things like that, they're still telling you about Percival, the penguin with the existential crisis in their dissertation or something like that, instead of actually getting to the academic rigour part of it, which drives me nuts. However, doesn't necessarily have to be clear, brief and concise in terms of story for this module, is my point. It's multimedial, leaves space for creativity and debate, comes in different formats and sizes, and is probably online nowadays. So in terms of being multimedia, you're thinking pictures, drawings, text, that sort of thing, and other things as well. In relation to modular programming, if we look at it from that perspective, this is where the functionality is broken into independent interchangeable modules containing everything necessary to execute one desired piece of functionality. So if we remember that a AAA game could possibly have 1,000 pages, this means that you can refer to that particular piece of functionality and then you can point to it in the document at any point, anytime you require. So, if we're considering Mortal Kombat 11, we have the lovely Raiden here. As an example, and we'll continue with this example, if you're thinking or looking at the combat system, you should be able to reference that particular part of functionality in the document. If you're looking at the projectile system, once again, that particular piece of functionality in the document, and even the character that is Raiden, he will have his own particular piece of functionality in the document. So everything is described, every little minuscule detail. Goals and requirements. When we're considering the example of Mortal Kombat 11, the goal of that game is to offer a single player experience to a Mortal Kombat 11 player, of course. Many things, so when you're considering multi-players or multiple players, the first and foremost thing is to offer a single player experience to start with. Introduce new characters and levels. You'll notice that if you go on Amazon Prime or Netflix, there is a history of Mortal Kombat, and you'll kind of notice that some characters have stood the test of time. Some things like fatalities have always been the unique selling point of Mortal Kombat, and they've stood the test of time. But things that were introduced, like in Mortal Kombat 3, things like animalities and I think peopalities, have not stood the test of time. So basically, you're trying to keep the fan base, the rudimentary gameplay that everyone sort of knows and loves, but you're also trying to expand that to attract newer people, while at the same time sort of doing a little bit of market research perhaps to see what the computer game playing or the player preferences are in order to better expand the game and make greater sales as well. So we're also trying to expand the storytelling facility. It may very well be that if you're a single player, I don't like multiplayer games because I always embarrass myself because I don't. But anyway, if you're considering single player games, you may wish to try and enhance that with a storytelling facility as well. So requirements: keep the game accessible, avoid adding too many new mechanics. Should be a versatile system as well, so it should be changeable, but not too changeable. The balance must be just right. Not too hot, not too cold, just right, like Goldilocks. Keep old characters in balance with new ones. Adhere to storytelling setting guidelines as well. So here we have a sort of example. Shang Tsung, he's been in Mortal Kombat from the very beginning, from the first game, a well-established character. I think Jax here is a well-established character as well. But one of the main unique selling points of the Mortal Kombat franchise has always been the fatalities, and here's the fatality being executed right here. And you see what's eventually going to happen is that people from the nether realm, these demons are going to come up and disembowel him quite horribly. It's absolutely disgusting, to be perfectly honest. But it's good to watch. And he seems to have many livers and many kidneys, and he is disemboweled in the most grotesque fashion. But anyway, should be the result of a discussion, and this is a bit of a confrontation, really, in terms of pitching your ideas and being open to criticism. There are no ideas that are too crazy, and you've got to try not to be too overly critical to the ideas of others, so you've got to try and be quite diplomatic. Computer games students tend to be very, very critical of each other's work. I've noticed that through many years of running this program and being on the program, where students sort of later in the program, level 4, perhaps, or year 4, level 10, will try and produce a game and have it evaluated, and the students will say, no, it's crap, it's terrible, absolutely awful, without even thinking about it, without even attempting to be nice. And you've always kind of got to say, well, you know what you've produced isn't exactly brilliant either, otherwise you'd be a millionaire, so come on now. So try not to be overly critical. It's about brainstorming. There's no idea that is too ridiculous in brainstorming. Apparently, I don't think you're allowed to call it brainstorming anymore. I will check. Only when ideas have survived criticism is it clear what to write. And to give you a sort of example of that, I had a student many years ago who considered himself a bit of a storyteller, documentalist. He was really, really into writing the story for this particular game, and he had written pages upon pages. And he sat me down and he said, Thomas, will you read this and tell me what you think? Right, okay, right, no problem. And I've made notes of it because it was so disgustingly hilarious. And I was trying not to be too overly critical, but eventually I did destroy him. So, the first opening line was, Mario was the only child of a mafia gangster who witnessed his mother getting shot at point blank range in the head 1 year ago. So that's how he starts off his story. He's like, oh, we're starting at a high point, it's lovely. And then eventually, several pages later, or paragraphs later, it reads, he is being followed through an alley when he is surprised to realise that it is his brother. And you go, I'm very surprised, because according to this first sentence, he's an only child, so how in the name of God does he have a brother? And he says, well, I was toying with the idea of making him an only child, but then possibly a sibling, and you haven't really quite decided yet. And you're going, well, you have to decide in order to make it consistent, otherwise people get confused. And then the next part that completely unleashed me was, he beats up Vinny to find out the location of his missing mother. And you're going, I'm sorry, this woman is now missing? I thought she was dead. She's been shot in the face at point blank range. Why is there any confusion as to whether she survived or not? And he says, well, it was when he was younger. I said, yes, it says a year ago. So in the character profile, he was 30. So when he was 29, he witnessed his mother being shot point blank in the face. So why is he confused whether she survived or not? Oh God, Michael. That was the student's name, Michael. But anyway, I pointed out these discrepancies, and of course, it's good, but I suppose. And it sort of made me think of Norman Bates. You know, maybe he's bringing the mother back that way. How did this woman survive? Maybe he did kill her, or maybe she did get killed and he just brought her back through sheer fantasy. And it also kind of reminded me of the Simpsons episode where Homer attempts to tell a sort of Halloween story, and it's just god awful, you know. And then his wife came through the door. And did I mention she was dead? No, well, she was. And she hit him in the head with a golf club. So, don't you remember? He went golfing all the time and it really bugged her. You said you went bowling. Oh, Homer! I've coughed up scarier stuff than that. So, as long as these things are consistent, it's important to let people sort of read it to make sure that they understand it from a fresh perspective. Because basically what sort of happened to Michael was he had different ideas and didn't iron them out. And that was it. So, clarity, brief, it has to be clear, brief and concise. In terms of clarity, the reader doesn't have to put too much effort into understanding it. If you're going cross-eyed to trying to read someone's idea, then obviously there are discrepancies, inconsistencies, it's highly ambiguous, then you need to rethink it. Comprehensive and covers all necessary detail. Here I'm actually talking about the sort of story example that I was talking about earlier. But really we're talking about the entire game's design document in its entirety here. So it has to be comprehensive, covers all necessary detail. Bullet points are likely too concise, but if you find that you're running into 2 or 3 pages, then you need to split up the functionality, of course, and try not to use sort of weak statements. In terms of being multimedial, I've used this screenshot as a particular example, because as you can see, you've got the character, you've got the level constructs, the materials the level is made of, and of course the objects as well in the inventory. You've got a sort of map, and that sort of represents that as well, so it's multimedial. But also, when you're talking about the game's design document, that can be pictorial, it can be drawings, it can be textual, that sort of thing. For animation students, you might wish to draw them. Okay. Creativity and debate. A game team is composed of many talented individuals, many. And the idea is to convey intention rather than implementation. So try not to tell other people how to do their jobs. It's very, very easy to criticize and tell people how to do their jobs. I am a church organist and I get told how to do my job all the time, generally by people that couldn't play a note. So try not to do that. Put yourself into the person's shoes and actually say to yourself, could I do their job? And people, it's my experience that people may not necessarily do the job that you want, but they do a job. So try not to criticize. Okay? It's the general rule for life. Formats and sizes could be in Google Docs. That's a sort of good way of doing it nowadays. And then of course you've got other things as well. Could be like PowerPoint, Word, what else? Visio, or whatever particular application you prefer. So again, think about that. Online, everything should be online. Do yourself a favour and make the most of the incredible technology available to us nowadays. Even a sketchbook, for example, take pictures of your sketchbook animation students and put up online. Not online, I beg your pardon, but put it in secondary storage. Keep a copy of it so that you don't lose it. And do it now and thank yourself for having done so in a few years' time, because you do lose stuff. I've seen plenty of students, have a fit, and plenty of staff members as well, when they actually lose things just through forgetting to back things up. So everything is online now. Make sure that you actually make use of that. Put things on the cloud, put things on your iPad, put things on other machines, and make sure that you don't actually lose anything. Generally what I do is I email. I'm working on a book right now, so if I do that, do a chapter, then I email it to myself so I don't lose anything. And you should possibly consider that with drawings and any other material as well. And programs as well, computer games development students, okay? So what is a games design document? Peterson, 2009, defines a games design document as the following. The games design document is the designer's entire vision spelled out in detail, which includes all of the storyline, character dialogue, world maps, city views, and detailed room specifications such as sample wallpaper, artwork, and rug designs. So I'm giving you that definition so that you can see the amount of detail that's actually held in these things, how much detail you can drill down to, okay? Also includes audio content for background or ambient sounds, sound effects, character dialogue with accents, speech patterns, that level of detail, programming and AI considerations. Okay. Also called the Game Bible, the game's design document. And if something exists in the game, it should exist in that design document, apparently. And to avoid confusion, burn the previous version. You will burn! By the way, what you should do is get the extended versions of The Hobbit. And for the Desolation of Smaug, animation students and games development students, because this is absolutely fascinating, how they constructed this dragon. It's about an hour's worth of footage, how they actually constructed the dragon using Benedict Cumberbatch and all the animation techniques and designing him. Oh my goodness, it's absolutely fascinating. And I suggest that you buy the Desolation of Smaug extended version and do watch all of that, because it really is quite relevant to your field. And I absolutely love him. He is the best dragon ever. He's my total favourite. You know, when he sort of lands, who are you that would stand against me? Oh, that is a pity. Anyway, never mind. Right, Wikipedia, even though we shouldn't reference Wikipedia, the games design document is described as a highly descriptive living design document of the design for a video game. A game design document is created and edited by the development team, and it is primarily used in the video game industry to organise efforts within a development team. The document is created by the development team as a result of collaboration between their designers, artists and programmers as a guiding vision, which is used throughout the game development process. When a game is commissioned by a game publisher to the development team, the document must be created by the development team and is often attached to the agreement between publisher and developer. The developer has to adhere to the game design document during game development process. Okay, so that's Wikipedia. We shouldn't reference Wikipedia ever. It's bad because it's always changing. This is not a viable academic source, but it is a good sort of start if you're doing sort of background research. So, in terms of content, it could be text, images, diagrams, concept art, or any applicable media to better illustrate the design decision. So, an important consideration is that it's considered a requirement by many companies but has no set industry standard form. So it could be a Word document or it could be an online collaborative tool. And for the purposes of this module, it will be a template provided on, damn it, I've put Moodle. It should be Aula, it will be provided on Aula, the template, okay? I've got a sort of Word document, and all you really need to do is fill that out, or fill it in. And I've got every sort of constituent part for you down, okay? Shouldn't be any difficulty there. Okay, so what should it consist of for the purposes of this module? Story. Crawford in 1982, he wrote The Art of Computer Games Design, so that's a good book to, I think you can get it more or less free on the internet. A story is a linearly ordered sequence of events set by a storyteller, whereas a game allows the player to have a choice of the sequence of events. So that's where games are fantastic, because you get to be interactive and make the choices, produce what is happening, be a producer in the experience. A play of a game can be told afterwards as a story, but a game cannot be constructed from a story alone. But in lecture 4, we will see why that is a bloody good start. But anyway, puts the gamer in a position where they know what is going on and gives them the reasons for why they have to do what they have to do. So it gives them a particular context. Now, to simplify that, if you think of a Mario game, basically Bowser runs off with the princess and, oh, it's me, Mario, I've got to get her, got to save her and marry her. So he's always trying to save the princess. And if it's Donkey Kong, it's like, oh no, my bananas have been stolen again, and I've got to go, and I can't imagine why I need this much potassium, but I've got to traverse all these levels and steal back my banana hoard. So it always gives them the context for why they're doing what they're doing. So, sorry, it's really an account of a series of events, okay? A story can be a high level of abstraction. Now, I have the Tesseract there because I think we've all seen The Avengers in 2012. Now, basically, if you were going to go into a room and I was going to say, give me a tenner and I'll give you the story. And I was simply to say, well, Loki comes to Earth with the Tesseract, he sort of fights the Avengers, he slightly wins, but then they rally around and they beat him, and everything's cool. You wouldn't feel comfortable actually paying for that. Because it's missing out quite a lot. So I often see the story as the high level of abstraction, the sort of overview of everything, and then you get different types of narrative in games which divulge the details of the story, and that sort of happens in films as well. So you get emergent and embedded narrative, and we'll talk about that later, and story can be used to set the scene. It can be incredibly simplistic, like I suppose go and save the princess, get your bananas, and can be ridiculously complex, such as Lord of the Rings, where it even has a denouement and things like that. You get to the end of the Lord of the Rings movies and you think, oh, well, do you get to the end? The ring is destroyed and you're like, this is the end. It's not the end. There are many, many more things to happen. Anyway, sometimes additions to the story sort of ruin fluidity, I've noticed. So for example, if you consider Star Wars for A New Hope, and then you consider that sort of prequel, what the hell was it called? Rogue One. And you see Darth Vader doing his sort of slaughter here, he kills everyone. You see Leia running off with the Death Star plans, getting on a ship and shooting off, and then you see him kind of standing there, I missed her. But also, in the next movie, you're almost sort of, you're led to believe that it is a sort of routine search, and it's you weren't on any mercy mission this time, Your Highness. You know, I saw you actually fly off with the Death Star plan, so make with them. You know, he's part of a rebel alliance and a traitor. Take her away. You know, and it seems to ruin the fluidity in terms of that movie for me anyway. You may disagree if you like. So that Billy slaughter there, so good. Right, okay. Story can become ridiculously complex when you consider things like The Simpsons and Family Guy. They exist in a floating storyline, which basically means the characters of Bart there is perpetually 10. Lisa is perpetually 8 forever. Yes. And then, of course, because these were incredibly successful, I believe The Simpsons is in its 30th season now, and Family Guy, which is like a dirty version of it, and I just love Stewie because he's a brilliant genius, is, you know, probably similar as season 20 or something, who knows. But because of that, the Simpsons cast or characters has now become far greater. Yeah. So eventually, once this appears, I actually have that in my office wall, and I'm starting to miss my office. Can't believe I'm saying that. So, in terms of story, for the purposes of this module, when you consider Mortal Kombat as well, this is Mortal Kombat 2, and there we have a small set of characters. We have a hidden character, a Reptile, Melina, Liu Kang, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, Kintaro actually, and Shao Kahn. Now, before that in Mortal Kombat 1, it was even smaller. I think it was about 6 characters or 7 characters or something like that. But now, when you consider the story has expanded, and even the movie that was released in 1995, I believe, sets the scene by saying, "Your world is one of many realms. One of them is a forsaken land called Outworld, ruled by an immortal who was crowned himself emperor. Now he seeks a new world to conquer and enslave. To enter the realm of Earth, the emperor's demon sorcerer Shang Tsung and his warriors have to win 10 straight victories in Mortal Kombat. They have won 9. This will be the 10th tournament." And that was a terrible impression of Christopher Lambert. I'm ashamed of myself. He always does this, like, ha 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 ha. Anyway, it was Christopher Lambert that plays Bob Raiden, probably before many of you were born. Anyway, the point is, I don't understand what's happening to my slides there. They're all blocked out. Oh, well, you get the bare ones anyway. But now the cast of Mortal Kombat, not the cast, but the characters in Mortal Kombat has obviously, increased. I don't like using the term exponentially, but nearly exponentially. So you can see a dramatic increase in the amount of characters. In terms of story, you sometimes have crossovers. I quite like this crossover, to be honest. There's Batman and Superman. They did a crossover, Batman versus Superman. I was in Tesco in Kilmarnock the other weekend there, of all places, and I was wearing my sort of Superman hoodie, Superman top, and Superman mask, and I saw Batman, someone wearing a Batman mask, and I said, "Batman, we meet again." He says, "All right, mate. We probably have to have a wee fight outside." "Yes," and then I'll completely and utterly you win, and then I'll completely and utterly confuse you by shouting "Martha," because apparently we have the same, mother's name. Anyway, he's quite clearly looking at Superman's crotch there. Never mind. Really, there was a bit of an exercise associated with that. Could ask the students. I was supposed to ask you to provide storylines for these 2 characters as an exercise, but we can't do that. Game of Thrones, highly complicated story. And how did Game of Thrones end? It was the best ending for me. I just wanted everyone to die, and the dragon to kill them, and the dragon to fly away unharmed. And Drogon was my favourite dragon, and it all worked out brilliantly for me. I think I probably am the only person on earth that got the ending to Game of Thrones that they wanted. Anyway, highly complex storyline, all these different houses battling for the throne, as you know. Okay, so story example for, I don't understand what's happening to my slides, and I do apologise. Story example for The Legend of Zelda. Link awakens in an unknown island. This is Link's Awakening, which I've got for the Switch and the original Game Boy. Unknown island, surrounded by friends and foes. You must collect a number of objects, solve a variety of puzzles, and complete 8 dungeons to obtain the 8 instruments of the sirens in order to wake the windfish to complete the game. Other story examples could be save the princess, kill the zombies, and they can be incredibly simplistic. So you can do a sort of slight overview for your game as well. But don't worry, this will all be explained in the template, and I'll do potentially some Microsoft Teams meetings or whatever if people are having difficulty. Okay, so don't panic. Okay, so what should it consist of? There should be protagonists, antagonists, supporting characters, minions. So of course here you have Mario, Bowser, so protagonist, antagonist, yep, Sonic, so there should be characters in your game. Not necessarily, to be honest. Tetris certainly doesn't have any characters, so whatever game you're wanting to come up with, don't worry about it, okay? So Here are some of the objects, perhaps, in terms of characters. This is one of my favourites, Plants versus Zombies 2, which I have played to death. So, of course, you've got all your plants and you've got all your different sorts of zombies. The best part about that, in terms of object-oriented programming, is that the underlying sort of functionality is already there. And all they do now is they send you a patch and they update everything and extend the game that way. But we'll talk about that in the programming module. Yeah. Now, here we have sort of designs and philosophies, ideologies sort of intermingling. So we have the sort of X-Men Marvel universe sort of intermingling, okay? But we also have it with Lego, yeah? So sometimes these ideas can come together. And here's another one that is slowly appearing. And it's Legos, what is it? Lego Star Wars, I'm sure. Master Yoda, you survived. Surprised. Yes, it seems to be that Emperor Palpatine is throwing down with Darth Vader there. So that's just to show you that two sort of design ideologies can intermingle, yeah. You should have objects as well. So that's all the objects from Zelda Majora's Mask. So you can have all of that in your game design document. So levels, story, characters, and objects. And here's a sort of inventory as well. So it can be whatever particular design that you want. And there's a whole load of weapons. So it can be nice, cutesy Nintendo game or an incredibly violent, bloody game. Whatever you want, war game. So we're looking at influences. What should this consist of for the purposes of this module? Influences, what has influenced your particular game. Could be many things. Could be a simple platformer game. You could just say it. Is it Mario that's influenced your game? Is it Zelda that's influenced your game? Years ago, I did a lecture on originality. Coming up with something original is incredibly difficult nowadays because basically everything has been done to death. But we had a sort of group of third years, and it was a case of, so what sort of game are you developing? And it was a case of, well, we've got this guy traversing a level, and he's taking on foes and going down pipes. Oh no, it's Mario! Oh, either that, it was the first-person shooter. Well, they're in an environment and they're shooting zombies, and you go, oh God, no one's got any originality anymore. So what games is your game based on? What characters are your characters based on? So be very honest about where these things come from. They can come from games, books, movies, whatever you want, even if it is from the depths of your imagination. That's absolutely cool. Coming up with a completely original idea is extremely difficult, and we'll discuss that in lecture 4. Last year, a student came up with the idea of a genetically altered half-dead hare going through a lab killing people who had survived vivisection. And this was her level design, so that's perfectly okay to have things like that in there, okay? That was the level design, and that was what the game actually transpired into. And that was great. It really was a good example of level design because she stuck to it, and I've got to tell you, it wasn't exactly the most thrilling game, but there you have it. It's completely and utterly transposed. So as a sort of example for you. So other sort of level designs, this is Hungry Shark Evolution. So you can see the sort of level design in terms of how the level is laid out. But then, of course, you can go to the other sort of components of it as well. So that's one representation. Then you can actually be in the level. So that's obviously a map, and that is obviously the level itself. Then you can actually look at things like environments as well. Are you going to have a particular theme, like in Plants vs Zombies, where you have Pirate Seas, Wild West, yeah? The Egyptian level as well. In Mario, we always seem to have the sort of obligatory fire, snow, desert, water levels, yes? So you can think of environments too. Art, you can take things off the internet, providing that you acknowledge them. I have no difficulty with that. That's absolutely fine. Not everyone can draw. You can take things from Turbo Squid if you want, and you can also draw and develop your own characters. So my point is, use this module to enhance your skills as you see fit. Animation people, if you want to work in your drawing, then do so. Games development people, if you're wanting to work in your implementation, then please do so. Okay. Sound and music, you can have theme tunes for the overall game. You can even use, someone did a sort of Star Wars game at one point. pieces of music associated with particular characters, leitmotifs. So Mario, yes. My ringtone is the Imperial March, which I'll probably show you at some point. So that's Darth Vader, obviously. And this can be anything that you like, providing that you can justify particular sound effects. Obviously, pew pew pew, shooting, jumping, nee nee. Oh, do I have a Mario? No, I don't. Being destroyed, swords, ting ting ting. Lightsabers, bzz, due to the nature of sound effects, this will probably not take up a phenomenal amount of space in a game's design document, but you can have links to the sound effects if you want. Okay, user interface, this encompasses menus, introduction screens, and of course the control mechanism. So maybe if you're not doing a game implementation, you can actually talk about the sort of the game introduction screens and the ending screens as well. And that's absolutely fine. And how these things are controlled, okay? Should graphical user interface principles apply? Of course, so think about that. User-centered design, directness of manipulation, where you're actually always manipulating a window. Metaphors that we sort of discussed last week. The most famous metaphor is the recycle bin. Consistency in DVDs. I always use DVDs as an example because I hate having to click on Scooby Snacks to get to the extras, of the DVD of Scooby-Doo. Appropriate feedback, aesthetics, forgiveness, simplicity. Think of human memory limitations, chunking, plus or minus 2 in terms of menus, system messages. This is the most annoying thing ever. This paperclip that would always sort of tap in the screen if you ignored it. Really, really irritating. It goes in the Hall of Fame as being one of the worst designs ever, so we'll discuss that as well, or you could put that into your game design document. So here's the sort of design template by this academic. I will put the template that you should probably work from, but this, as I say, is to give you ideas. So the academic has sort of put this into a book. It's an overview, a design summary, unique selling point list, the game objective, what is the player's key objective in the game, what is the goal, what kind of visual style are you going for, are you designing the game to mirror reality, are you trying to create something visually unique, that sort of thing. Think about these things. Okay, target audience, who are you actually aiming for? Are you aiming at mass market gamers, families, younger players, what? List all the platforms as well. Is it going to be mobile platform? And obviously Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4 is probably, just say PC, it's probably going to be a bit, unrealistic perhaps. But do think of that, what platform you're looking for. Expected rating, so if it's an 18, if it's got adult content in it or whatever, use a sort of PEGI website rating perhaps. The gameplay, write a few pages of narrative describing the typical 5 or 10 minute section of the game. What particular game modes are you going to have? How are they going to be unlocked? Are they always available? What particular mechanics? We'll do an entire lecture on game mechanics. So don't worry about that. So as I say, these are just things to think about. AI description, are enemies going to come and attempt to kill you if you get too close? What are they? Are they cars? Are they objects? How difficult is it going to be? Are you going to have very, very easy, medium, easy, hard, very, very hard, that sort of thing. Controls on all the platforms. So you can describe the control system in each platform as well. Camera descriptions, interface, the graphical user interface as well. So just have a read through these things yourself. Audio and music, multiplayer online, saving and loading system, how is that going to be accomplished? Yes. The detail, the backstory, write a sort of overview, write a description of the background history of the main characters of the world or whatever. Summarize the game storyline from beginning to end, try that. The mission list, the game geography, how, in Zelda that you've got a sort of pretty specified mission list, but there are sort of sub-quests and everything that interweave, and they don't necessarily have to be done in chronological order all the time, although you do kind of find that you do come to a dead end in the game and you think, I need this particular item in order to progress, and it's as a result of doing this particular quest. So think about that as well. Key character descriptions, vehicle object descriptions, these can simply be sketches if you want. Project issues, risk, you can put all of that in as well. Licenses, languages, the overview, the team, this can be for later. I mean, this is obviously quite a bit of overkill, but as I say, I'm just trying to give you some ideas if you're doing the sort of bigger option. Don't worry about it. Middleware to be used perhaps is another thing you may wish to consider. Key project risks, design risks, and then a summary. Summarise the game design document, why you think that there's the potential to be a great game. You've got to be able to sort of sell yourself and leave the reader excited and desperate to play the game. Okay, so general guidelines. When you're actually producing the game's design document, I'm going to put the template on Aula 4. So it's far more simplistic than that, but these are some things that you can consider. Okay, so it's just out of your own interest that I've spoken through that and given you the information. Make sure that you proofread the document and it's correct in terms of punctuation, spelling and grammar. I will knock marks off for things like that because I've got to read it, therefore you have to. Sorry about that. Images are justified and neat to make sure they're not all higgledy-piggledy all over the place, unless that's sort of part of your design. It doesn't matter if you go over the word count. I don't necessarily care about the word count, but it certainly matters if you go drastically under it. If you are doing the 1,000 word option and you produce 600 words, why should you get the full marks for that? Because quite clearly you haven't put the effort in. It has to be 1,000 words, and for the larger one it has to be 2,000 words at least. And if not, then you're not getting the full mark allocation. Why should you? Yeah. The text is justified and neat. So there's all the references of everything that I've sort of used in the presentation. These are academic references, and to be perfectly honest, this is a bit overkill, and I do apologise for that. I'll put a sort of template on it. As I say, this is just for your own interest, and hopefully you get something from it as well. But definitely do buy the extended version of The Desolation of Smaug. It is fantastic. It rocks. But there's all the references there. As I say, I will put this lecture on Aula and the video as well, and you can have the template, and it's actually far more simplistic than that, but it was more out of the sake of completeness. Okay. Well, I shall leave it now. Have a very, very good day. Bye-bye.